And welcome into Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Sorry, I'm talking lowly because you guys yelled at me. I guess when I first get on the microphone, the first couple words I say are very magnified, audibly, really loud, and blowing out your speakers. So I came at you light today. Now I can get loud, and it just kind of regulates itself. So I'm told. Anyway, Buckeye Huddle Primetime. I'm your friend Juck. Appreciate you so much for joining me as we are here now every Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. live. And we got a sweet show for you tonight. As always, I will get to your super chats, but if you want to wait till the end, I always like to pop in the chat and holler at you guys after I'm done with my segments. And if you want to wait and get something discussed here on the screen, wait till I'm done, put them in there, and I'll do my best to get your topic brought up. It doesn't cost you anything but a like and a subscription, as we've got a goal, 30,000 subscribers here at the channel. By the Texas game, which is a pretty aggressive goal, but that's the goal that's been set by my boss. So help me out here. Let him know he made the right choice by bringing me aboard and subscribe to the channel. A programming announcement tomorrow or Friday. Mark Givler and myself going to be doing our first episode of the Skull Session together. And the Skull Session is the flagship recruiting show here at Buckeye Huddle. Not a lot of action going on right now in Ohio State recruiting. I think it's a good time to have kind of an overarching discussion about recruiting philosophy at Ohio State, what's going on around the country, and what we think may change for the class of 2027. A lot of Ohio State fans really frustrated with the current state of the class. The class of 2026 certainly has some high-level studs, though. Definitely some really good evaluations as well. But without a doubt, been a tough pill to swallow when you see Ohio State coaches waste time and effort and resources getting themselves in position to win a recruitment in the classic sense, and then lose the recruitment in the new age reality of recruiting, particularly coming off a national championship season. So been difficult to see that, been difficult to see USC sitting with the number 1 class, Oregon sitting with the number 3 class. Will it be a one-year thing? I think it's clear that they are willing to accept it this year. I don't think there will be any pivot. There won't be any doubling back with a new approach on some guys that they lost. At least that's what I've taken out of the previous 2 times we've heard Ross Bjork speak since the big change. One of those statements, he made at yesterday's press conference. Yesterday's press conference about the game day atmosphere. That did not deter Buckeye Huddle's own Tony Gerdeman from asking what fans really want to know about. And we will talk about that with Tony this evening, as Tony Gerdeman will join us tonight here on the show. So we'll talk to Tony about that. We'll talk to him about Ryan Day's press conference, as he dropped a really interesting piece of news. And James Laurinaitis spoke today. We'll see if Tony took anything from James. James is doing something really cool with the guys. So every day in their meetings, he's teaching them about one previous All-American Ohio State linebacker, which I love. Today was Pepper Johnson. Who doesn't love Pepper, man? Super Bowl with the Giants, then came to the Browns. Always love watching him. But I thought it was so awesome that I tweeted about it earlier, and somebody said, this should be mandatory in every position group after that Mount Rushmore video. And if you have not seen the Mount Rushmore video that gentleman was speaking of, Edric Houston walked around. First off, Edric Houston is an absolute superstar behind the mic. We've now seen him do this multiple times. Huge personality, and he is just fantastic. But after practice, he went around asking everybody on the team to name their Mount Rushmore of Ohio State players. Now, I don't know who's on your Mount Rushmore, but let's hear what the guys have to say about it.
Like 5 all time?
It's 4.
4 or 5?
It's 4 people on Mount Rushmore.
Miles Young.
Okay.
That's off the bat. Like, that's unanimous. Ted Ginn Jr., receiver. Chris Carter.
Okay.
Last one. I'm going to go with QB here. I'm going to say CJ Stroud.
Orlando Pace. Archie Griffin.
Okay.
Randy Gradishar.
Okay.
You don't even know who that is, which is embarrassing. But he's the best linebacker.
I'm also 19.
You're true, that's true. But Randy Gradishar is an NFL Hall of Famer and college football Hall of Famer.
What about James Laurinaitis?
Let's go Mike Doss.
I got to go Chase Young, Zeke, Marv, and Jack Sawyer.
Yours. How old are you?
I'm 18.
Makes sense.
Got Braxton Miller. I got Ezekiel Elliott. I got Jeff Okuda. And I give me I ain't gonna lie, give me Jack Sawyer. That's my boy.
Reese Cornerback, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chase Young, and last one, quarterback. I want to go quarterback. I'm going to go CJ Stroud.
Ryan Shazier, Marshawn Lattimore, Cam Hayward, James Laurinaitis.
Hey, wait.
Thank you.
And I got an honorable mention, Chase Young, no cap.
I'm about to say, Chase Young got to be in there.
Chase, you got to do the Bosa's. Man, I'm going to do Captain Jack, that Texas play. You can't beat that.
1, Chase. Nick. Joey. I'm going to go. So tough, man. I'm going to go JT. JT? Okay, that's the first. All right, my Mount Rushmore. Chase Young, gotta go Ezekiel Elliott. I'm gonna go recent. I'm gonna say Jack Sawyer, and then I'm gonna go back old school James Laurinaitis.
James Laurinaitis is old school, and that makes me officially old. But pretty funny listening to the young guys talk about their Mount Rushmore. So, like, to me, for the Mount Rushmore, you have got to. I mean, there's been so many great players that have come through Ohio State. Like, it's got to be great player and something really unique. It's got to be something a little extra because the list, it's so difficult to differentiate. However, there are a couple of guys that really need to be on anyone who's making a serious Mount Rushmore, right? Orlando Pace is in the running for the greatest at his position of all time at every level of football. He's in the running for the most dominant offensive player in the history of college football. If you get a player like that come through your school, also from the home state, a guy who honestly really maybe number one in the history at his position in every level of football. It's just, he really is. He's got to be on your Mount Rushmore, whether you find his position sexy or not. So Orlando Pace has to be number one. Also at Ohio State, obviously, you got the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner. In the history of the award, it's Archie Griffin. And in addition to that, a guy who has stayed around the university and essentially been the ambassador of Ohio State athletics for all this time. Anytime they need something, he's there. In fact, we'll talk about some of these traditions with Tony in a little bit. Archie will be the one starting off one of those traditions. I just don't think those guys can be left off. And Archie, you know, he's omnipresent. He really is just like, he is Ohio State. So to me, it's number 3 or 4 where it gets difficult. But number 3, when I talk about, to me, it's got to have a little bit of extra something. Can't just be a great player. How about the 100-year-old stadium that the Buckeyes are playing in, which has a few nicknames? I talk often about Ohioans and their love for their Buckeyes. Chick Harley turned that up to 100, playing in a 20,000-seat Ohio Field Stadium. And he drew enough interest that led to the money being raised to build the stadium, the house that Harley built. It's just a monumental contribution to Ohio State football. He was Ohio State's first ever consensus All-American, first ever 3-time All-American, led the Buckeyes to their first Big Ten championship. After 2 years at Ohio State, he left and fought in the war, then came back and played his final year and got the Buckeyes their first win over Michigan, a game where he had 4 interceptions, a game that after the game, Fielding Yost addressed the team. You boys gave a grand exhibition of football strategy, and while I'm dreadfully sorry that we lost, I want to congratulate you. And you, Mr. Harley, I believe are one of the finest little machines I've ever seen. He was a running back, a safety, a kicker, a punter. His running style, once described, kind of a cross between music and cannon fire. It brought your heart up under your ears. He was 5'8", 165 pounds. So those are my first 3. Those ones relatively easy for me. It's the 4th that I have a hard time, and I got a couple of players in the discussion. But the one that I always come back to is the guy that won the Heisman Trophy by the biggest margin ever at the time, Troy Smith, a Clevelander who was an athlete coming in, playing running back some his freshman year. And in his own class was Justin Swick, thought at the time by all of us to be one of the best in the country and a guy that most of us were incredibly excited for. And when Troy moves full-time to quarterback, the reports coming out were it was Troy who was impressing the team. The players wanted Troy, and man, it was disheartening. I didn't take it as Troy was going to be some great quarterback. I took it as Justin Swick was a bust. Here we got this gunslinger, supposed to be one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he's getting beat out by a dual threat guy. So Troy takes over as the starter, 5 games left in 2004, beats Michigan, then gets suspended for the Alamo Bowl, which adds to the story. The $500 handshake adds to the story. Many were out on him, like many of the fans. Like, they don't like that stuff. So a shaky start. Guy ends up beating Michigan 3 times. First starting quarterback to do that in like 50 years, maybe 60 or 70 years. It was amazing. The amount of confidence that you felt as an Ohio State fan with Troy Smith at quarterback just felt a little different, man. Troy was just a little different. Troy was always going to make a play. And obviously 2006, a dominant team. And of course, one of the more unfortunate endings to a career you could ever have. Who needs to get into that game? ESPN's Big Ten Player of the Decade. So Troy Smith gets my vote for number 4. That is Orlando Pace, Archie Griffin, Chick Harley, Troy Smith. My number 5 is Eddie George. I would love to know what our Tony Gerdeman thinks about my Mount Rushmore. Never a guy without an opinion. So let's welcome on to Buckeye Huddle Primetime for the first time, Tony Gerdeman. Tony, how you doing, buddy?
Juck, thanks for having me on. Long-time listener, first-time caller. As you're talking all of these names, I'm like, okay, well, the first one's right, and you've got the second one. I was waiting for Chick Harley there because I think it's absolutely Chick Harley, Orlando Pace, and Archie Griffin. And then you've got the arguments for 4. And I think there are a handful of players who have that. And I was thinking about this today because I never like to put a 4th guy there. I just go with Woody Hayes because it's nice and easy.
That's easy.
Eliminates all of the arguments. But it came to me, it's either Troy Smith or Chris Spielman, because Chris Spielman was that guy when I was growing up. He was a legend. But and he's won some awards, but he didn't win the Heisman. And as you said, there was just a sense of confidence with Troy. So I don't have an issue having Troy there. I think the best player I've ever seen at Ohio State is Orlando Pace. The best player that I've seen lately, I think, is Chase Young. But I don't want to go there with that's too recent, I think. And although even though Edric Houston is throwing out Chase Young, he's like, let's go recent, and he goes with whoever like that just played Jack Sawyer or JT Tuiamola or whatever. It's like I still consider Chase Young quite recent. Sorry, but his season was the most dominating defensive season I've seen. Before that, it was Malik Hooker. But defensive Mount Rushmore, I would also have like Antoine Winfield on there. But yeah. I'm okay with Troy Smith. Like I don't think I've ever gone with a 4th player. I just wimp out and go with Woody there to make it easy. But long answer short answer long. I would probably go Troy Smith as well because he's got the Heisman. He's got 3-0 against Michigan. He's got all those things you said. And he does have something extra special. He's got a few things extra special, being like what the last guy in the class and a kick returner as a true or a redshirt freshman, and just having a lot of doubts about him.
Yeah, a lot of doubts.
And having to overcome them.
Yeah. And that's what I you just need a little something extra when you're talking about so many great players. But I'm with you. Chase Young feels awfully recent, and also that was just the most dominating season I've seen in my adult life for sure. Spielman, obviously a huge personal favorite of mine, but so many great linebackers. I have a hard time putting one above the next, to be honest. But as I was talking about this Mount Rushmore and in the video that those guys put together, and I'm jotting down my notes for the show tonight, it got me thinking about the Texas game and Troy Smith and him playing them twice. James Laurinaitis brought up that game earlier today as we sit now, I think, less than 25 days now out from the game. I heard that Texas, things not going so great right now for them coming out of camp. At least that's what Sark wants everybody to believe. Mm-hmm. Ryan Wingo missed a week because he was thirsty. So I was told by the On Texas guys that he was a better prospect than Jeremiah. I can't see Jeremiah missing a week because he was thirsty. But how are you feeling about that game now as we're 24 days out?
Not too bad about it in terms of the Ohio State side of things, because I think you look at Texas and you're concerned about their defense, but the interior of the defensive line is brand new, 5 transfer defensive tackles, and who knows how those guys shape up. We know they've got excellent linebackers. They've lost some guys in the secondary as well, just like Ohio State has. But I feel good about Ohio State's offensive line. The question is obviously Julian saying I feel good about everything around the offense. And I don't feel bad about the quarterback. It's just this is a rough first start. So if you're going to feel relatively bad about something, you're going to feel about the quarterback. And then the Texas offensive line, they're still putting some stuff together. So does that give the Ohio State defensive line an advantage? It should. But can they contain Arch Manning in terms of the running game and the rollouts and just the scrambles and the escaping that he can do? I don't know that they want to run him a bunch, but I also know that they don't want him to just stand in the pocket. So I think containing him is the major thing. I think the secondary is going to be okay. So I feel like Ohio State is well positioned to win this one. I think all of the attention and the eyeballs are on Texas and Arch Manning, even though the game is in Columbus. I think maybe there'd be more. Would there be more eyes on Ohio State if this is a night game rather than a day game? Would there be more expectations for Ohio State to do something special if this is a night game rather than just a typical day game? I don't know, but I keep saying like 21-17, 24-21, something like that, Ohio State.
Okay. Well, that feels great to hear you say that. I'm honestly feeling the same way. I just, the fact that the Buckeyes have remained the favorite all this time, honestly, I find it strange that it feels like when I hear people talk about the game, 90% of the pundits and even a lot of Buckeye fans picking Texas and saying, it's not going to hurt you too much. It's okay. But I think they really got a realistic shot to win this game, as they should, as the favorite at home with a really, really good team. Obviously, we saw these quarterbacks the other day. You have watched them for 3 days of practice. I noticed that you did say Julian Sayin is the one concern in the midst of what Ryan Day calls a pretty thick competition still. Knowing what Ryan Day requires out of a quarterback and knowing what these two guys' strong suits are, it seems to me to be pretty much a formality that Julian Sayin ends up the quarterback. And I wouldn't be surprised if we heard that the next time Ryan Day's at the podium, which will be the 18th, 2 weeks left to go before the game. But are you feeling kind of the same way?
Yeah. Julian had a very strong practice on Saturday, as you saw, and finished well. And with Ryan Day, it's always do the routine things routinely. And that's, I think, what Julian was doing very well that day. As I've said it before on the Buckeye Weekly podcast, though, just because somebody is 8 of 10 passing, you don't know whether those 8 completions were to the right reads or those were just quick dump offs because he didn't stay with the progressions. And you don't know if somebody's 5 for 12 was better than that because they made the right reads. It's just the fourth team receiver or the walk-on left guard, didn't hold up their end of the bargain. So you can't just necessarily look at numbers or, hey, he completed a pass, even though that's what we do. We can only do so much while we're watching practice and trying to share information. But yeah, I've for a while this summer, I was just trying to whenever I'd write about the quarterback situation, I'd be like, Julian Sayin or Lincoln Keenholz. And maybe I just got tired of putting 2 names down. It's a lot of typing. So it's just like, you know what? I'm doing it. It's not because I'm lazy. I promise. I'm just going to go with everybody. The majority of people expect Julian Sayin to win the job. And is that fair to Lincoln Keenholz? No. Is that going to keep him from winning the job? No. He's going to have every opportunity to. So we're just talking to quarterbacks. I think the quarterbacks have learned a long time ago through other quarterbacks. Don't listen to social media. Don't listen to people talking about them. Nothing good's going to come from it. Everybody's going to be angry at you at some point or another. People hated CJ Stroud. People hated JT Barrett. People hated Troy Smith after that national championship game. It only takes one bad game to hear it from people. So just don't listen to them. So yeah, I'm still, until I see otherwise or hear otherwise, I'm told otherwise, I'm going to go with Julian Sayin. But I absolutely believe, like, if Lincoln plays better, he's the quarterback. Right. I'm with you there. So Ryan Day made an interesting comment that caught my attention yesterday, a couple of them, but one of them was, and I've heard him say this a couple times this offseason, about being a quarterback more than just, playing on the field, owning the huddle, owning the cadence, making sure everybody hears you. And I haven't ever heard him bring this up so much. And I'm thinking maybe he's bringing this up so much because these guys aren't doing such a great job with that. And
Julian, obviously a pretty quiet dude. Honestly, Lincoln's a pretty quiet dude too. They're both kind of reserved. Neither of them a very outgoing personality. Certainly nothing like Will Howard. However, listening to Julian last year versus listening to him just the other day talking, and again, then I saw him on an interview with Zach Herbstreit on 3, where he was clearly the more outgoing one in that interview. But it sounds to me like he's coming out of his shell a little bit. Did you pick up on the same thing?
Yeah, and that's interesting as well, because talking with Julian back at one of the bowl games, he was still a true freshman, and he hadn't been through the summer that in the winter and the summer that he has, and he's different. And same thing, that was one of the things I noticed about Lincoln Kienholz talking to him in the spring. Like, he was a totally different player in terms of talking with the media. And what does that mean? It just means they're more comfortable with themselves. They're more comfortable with everything. And so there's no like wavering in the voice when you talk to players where they're not sure what they want to say or how to say it. Like, Lincoln was a completely changed player person from, just a few months of off-season competition for this job. And I think it'll grow you up quickly. You know how being a president or the Ohio State head coach will age you quickly. Being in a competition to start at Ohio State at a quarterback will grow you up and then eventually age you. But yeah, I think both of them have stepped up in that way, where if you can speak to a locker room, it's no problem speaking to a bunch of, us. They're standing around a table.
Tavian St. Clair sure has that down in spades already. Pretty impressive, man.
Well, and he's been doing interviews for years now. So
right.
He's been doing interviews with Ohio State media for years now, and it's the biggest beat in sports. So, that's going to be easy for him now.
Yeah, pretty impressive stuff. I want to get to the big thing that Ryan Day said yesterday. Now, I listened to you last night talk about this, and you didn't seem. Let me tell everybody what happened here. I wish I had it to play. I didn't load it up. So Ryan Day was talking about Austin Siereveld playing tackle and then slipped in left tackle. And it sounded like he made an error and was asked to clarify. And he said, no, left tackle, which is obviously like, hold on, what? A lot of questions here from that. But he went on to talk about, he talked to Mick, talked to Tyler Bowen, talked about the measurables and does he have everything needed to play tackle? But he was speaking of left tackle. Well, this brings up a lot of questions. Ethan Onyanwa, obviously a massive transfer brought in here, very expensive transfer, a guy that everybody wanted to be the left tackle. Austin Siereveld, we've seen his trajectory just go up and up and up. And when it was in the spring, he was taking that right tackle position. It looked like everybody's looking at this like, is this really what this is going to be? Certainly seems like so. Pretty impressive stuff. Wins the Iron Buckeye for the second time. Like, the guy, I think, deserves a captaincy at this point. But now he's talking about left tackle. And this just blew me out of the water, Tony. You didn't like, what are you thinking here?
Well, the funny thing is we had a regular on our board mention this before fall camp started, because he said, look for Austin Siereveld at left tackle and Ethan Onyanwa at right tackle. And so first 3 days we did. And it's like, no, it's Austin Siereveld at right tackle and Ethan Onyanwa at left tackle. And so, this came kind of out of the blue from Ryan Day. And yet, they've moved around. We've seen Austin Siereveld at left tackle last year in camp. He played everywhere, frankly, in camp. When they were injured, he'd be at left tackle for one snap and left guard the next, and just be moving around doing double work. But it's interesting. I don't know if it's settled, because they're trying to figure out what all of these guys can do. They want to know, okay, if something does happen to left tackle, can Austin handle that? Or maybe were they looking to see if something does happen to left tackle, can Ethan handle that? So now they're getting information on both of those guys. So I don't know. I do know they're still in the information gathering phase right now. And then whatever happens with that information, they'll place those guys. I will say Onyanwa played right tackle all but last year at Rice. So he played right tackle against Texas in 2023. Right. So he played pretty well. So that's not no big thing for him. I think it's interesting, certainly. And, I think everybody maybe doubted Austin Siereveld early, because you're redshirt freshman. You're not supposed to be playing at this point, especially some of these 3-star kids or whatever, and Ohioans, where it's like, clearly we'll see you in year 4. Just buck up, young kid. And the way he turned it on last year during the illness, when the room was decimated, and he just took all of the snaps and got better. And then it's like, now he's a really good player. And at the end of the spring, Ryan Day said, I don't know who my starting 5 is. Austin's going to be in there. So we'll see. I don't think it's set left tackle, right tackle. I think it's too early, but would I be shocked now if he's at left tackle? No, because he's practicing there.
Really impressive stuff, man, watching his rise. It's really been impressive. But aside from those starters, who I think outside of Anyanwa and Austin, you got Carson, Luke, and Tegra. I think that's what we kind of all expect right now. If it didn't end up that way, it'd be pretty surprising. But outside of those guys, when we look at just the offensive line and the personnel all throughout the room, I was going through the other day, Justin Fry's recruits the other day, and Austin Sierraveld was one, Luke Montgomery, Josh Padilla, Ian Moore, Gabe Van Sickle, Jake Cook, Javon McFadden, Carter Lowe. Like, the only guys that don't appear ahead of schedule, and this isn't a bad thing, are the Armstrong twins. Those are the only guys that don't appear ahead of schedule, a crazy high hit rate. And what blew me away over the weekend was watching even Javon McFadden, a true freshman in one-on-one reps, just stonewall Caden McDonald, our stud defensive tackle. I am so impressed now at the depth of this room. And I not like, there was no way that I thought I would be thinking that at this point in the year.
Well, and Gabe Van Sickle, I was told a story last year. He was a June enrollee last year. And so like during summer workouts, he went, like they were pushing something or pulling something, and he went running and passing by some of the veterans. And there was like just a whooshing going past as he was pushing this sled or whatever. And it's like, who in the heck is that guy? And it's like, that's Gabe Van Sickle, and he's going to redshirt, but we'll see what he does as a redshirt freshman. And he's, with the 2s at right guard. I think Jake Cook is maybe the story of all of this, true freshman being the number 2 left guard. And he might be the next Austin Sierraveld in terms of, who is this guy? Why is he doing so well? Pat Elfline type of thing. You give a guy an opportunity, and then they make the most of it, and then they never give it back. And I think I mentioned this with Tom Orr on one of our shows, that just recently, this is the earliest and best and most solidified top 10 offensive line that I can remember at Ohio State, because I think the top 10. And then it's just a matter of, can somebody push in front of them or get in there? Because, Ian Moore at left tackle, Phillip Daniels at right tackle, Jake Cook, Gabe Van Sickle, and then Josh Padilla at center. Like, that's your 10 right there. Those are all of your backups. And Day said it this past week. He feels pretty good about 8, 9, and 10 maybe getting some time this year.
It's pretty ridiculous, man. Looking back just in 2023, heading into the season, I remember thinking, like, it is going to be years before they're able to turn this around. Things looked really, really bleak at that point. And then you win a national championship in 24, in much part thanks to that depth stepping up. And you enter into 2025 looking, like you just said, one of the best you've seen in a long, long time, which is just really cool. Now, looking at this class of 2026, heading into it, I was thinking, all right, listen, you want 6 offensive linemen in this class, but if you get 5, that'd be okay. Well, sitting at 4, and now that we've seen Jake Cook and Carter Lowe and Javon McFadden, looks like they're all going to hit. I'm not nearly as concerned with bringing in 5 or 6 at this point. I'd be okay with 4 because I really like the 4. A little bit of a scare yesterday for those who hadn't seen. Ohio State commit Aaron Thomas on 3 tweeted was visiting Florida State. Aaron said that's cap. I talked to Aaron today. He said his parents, obviously, they both went to Florida State, which we talked about a lot during his recruitment. And they just go to games throughout the year. He's like, I'm not even going now. So it wasn't a recruiting visit at all. Somebody caught wind of that. On 3 tweeted it to drum up some stuff. But those 4 certainly seem solidified. And boy, I really like those 4. So now I feel pretty comfortable with that. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, and you've got Justin Terry transferring over from West Virginia as a redshirt freshman. So like you can always backfill with that. So I think it's fine. We'll see what the development is, and I love the way they do their coaching, the offensive line coaching staff with 3 legit offensive line coaches that can really spend some time with the guys, and that's only going to help the development.
Being able to pull that off, like that is just flexing Ohio State muscle right there. Those are high level coaches, man. That is just really impressive. I do want to hit on a couple of the positions with you as we watch a lot of stuff on Saturday. I want to start at wide receiver. Now, last year, watching Brandon Inniss, you could definitely see the leadership. You could see he's a dog of a competitor, pretty good athlete. Never struck me as a dynamic type of athlete. But watching him Saturday, he just flashed all day on a field full of elite football players, even when he wasn't making a play, as that's a really good one. That's a really, I did a double take several times. Now, we know what he means to the team in his leadership capacity and what everybody thinks of him. Does he look more dynamic to you than he used to?
Yeah, 100%. He's got a little bit more Njigba to him, I think. Now you're seeing the quickness, the ability to make people miss, where before I think he got too big, and now he's dropped a little bit of weight. But as you said, he's setting personal records in all of his strength and speed tests and all of that stuff. So he definitely looks more dynamic after the catch, before the catch, during the catch. Like there was one catch where he had on Saturday, I think, where he got popped over the middle, but he held on to it. So yeah, he's a guy that I feel a lot better now, having seen the current iteration of Brandon Inniss, because last year it was fine, but it was fine. It's like it was more KJ Hill than Emeka Egbuka, where it's like, it's fine, but is it NFL top 3 rounds draft pick? It wasn't last year. And, I don't know, second year, there aren't a lot of those, but this year he looks as dynamic as you would want. And I'm fascinated to see how it goes, because I do think he's strong enough to run the ball in sweeps. Like there are some things you can do. And as he mentioned, he can also throw the ball. And, he did it as a junior at American Heritage to help out. And he's overall, just as Urban Meyer used to say, he's an energy giver, not an energy taker.
The interesting thing is, in the spring, there was a lot of people after, seeing Mylan Graham kind of break out, and people hadn't seen his athleticism. And boy, he's something, man. He's a marvel. He's clearly a first round athletic talent. We've seen plenty enough to know that that's what that looks like. And BI, maybe you want to see Mylan in that role a little more than him. And I remember we did quite a few shows and people were going back and forth. I was kind of leaning that way. Like, yeah, it might be better, but you owe it to BI. But now I just don't think so. I think I don't think I want to see that over Brandon. I think I'm pretty set with this. But you do want to see Mylan on the field. You'd love to see Quincy Porter on the field. I even feel like Bryson Rodgers deserves a shot to get some more snaps. He's so polished. He's fast. He catches the ball great. You're looking at 6 guys, I think, here that can really contribute at a very high level. Do you think we're going to see a bigger rotation this year? Could this be the year we see that?
Well, it should be, but Brian Hartline is not stubborn. It's just he's got a high ceiling on his players, and it takes a while for the younger players to get there. But I think what Brandon Inniss averaged about 13 snaps a game last year. I would like to see Mylan Graham do more than that, but again, Mylan's going to be like Carnell's backup. So, and Quincy Porter is Jeremiah Smith's backup, and Bryson Rodgers is the backup in the slot, and maybe he might view himself as a co-starter. So, in terms of like Mylan Graham getting Brandon Inniss's snaps, he's going to grow into a player that can play inside and out, and that takes some time. And he's progressing very well now, just because this is nothing new for him now. But in terms of these snaps, you also got to remember you've got 2 tight ends that are going to play a lot. They're going to play a lot of 12 personnel because of Max Clare, Will Kazmarek, and the advantages that they have with that. So then that means that you're probably getting fewer snaps for your slot receiver. And in that way, because who you can take off the field, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, or Brandon Innes. Probably Brandon Innes, or whoever. Maybe that's when you run into the ball, you give Jeremiah the break. You're like, all right, come on out, Jeremiah, and you let Brandon Innes and Carnell Tate go and block and do those things. But it's a terrible problem to have. Like, how are you going to get these receivers all of these snaps when you've got Max Clare out there too?
And the freshman Quincy Porter, Phillip Bell. Wow.
Great. He stood out. He stood out on Saturday. He's just kept getting open. And I don't know if that's because some of it's because he's playing against second stringers and third stringers or whatever. But when they continue to show up, I think that means something.
For sure. They look like total steals. And when I say steals, there were a lot of wide receivers. They were getting huge dollars in the class of 2025. Quincy ended up a 5-star. I'm certain he got taken care of fairly, but he could have got a massive check somewhere else. Phillip Bell was viewed really highly early on in the class and then kept dropping for some reason, but it looks like they had it right the first time around. The dude looks electric. These guys are future dudes. Heartline just keeps on doing it. But I was blown away by the freshman class of 2025. I loved it on paper. I followed it closely. I thought, because I had a lot of interactions with a lot of guys in the class, that I was overinflating it maybe in my head. But man, when you look at some of these guys out there, they look like they belong right away. And I mean, a lot of them, those two, the 3 offensive linemen, Bo Jackson, obviously TJ and Riley, Fahim Delane, just on and on and on. They look like they belong. And my question to you is, I've never had eyes on freshman classes over the year. You've seen a lot of them come through. Does it strike you as this one is particularly has more of those type dudes than usual?
The linebacker situation is interesting because they're already linebacker sized. And even James Laurinaitis was talking about it today, where he's only been here for a couple of years to see some actual true freshmen, and yeah, they're bigger than Garrett Stover and Peyton Pierce were for sure. But overall, I wasn't sure what to think about the receivers, and again, it's still very early. I'm all in on Quincy Porter. I've been all in on Quincy Porter well before he was committed. That he seems like the next guy up, and he lost his black stripe really, really quickly. Des Jones and Phillip Bell are both slot guys, and we'll see how they develop. I wasn't expecting either of them to play this year, and really, I don't know that they will. I think both will redshirt. And then Bob Miller, of course, we know that's going to take some time, but there's certainly things to like there. And I think the skill positions overall. This is my first time seeing Turbo Rogers in camp, and he showed up every single day and would show up out of nowhere because you couldn't see him behind the line of scrimmage, behind the offensive line. And if you're watching from on that third day, I went and watched in the far corner while you guys were in the end zone. I went in the far corner towards with the fans. I don't even know if I was supposed to be over there, but I wanted to see more of the quarterbacks. But you're watching from whatever distance away, and you lose sight of him. So defense is going to lose sight of him, and then boom, he just pops out, and he's impressive. But again, I don't know that he's going to play more than 4 regular season games this year, because you got Bo Jackson, you got Samuel Dixon now that he's dropped the Williams.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough to get those true freshmen some carries.
Don't forget, Bo's one of those true freshmen, Tone.
Well, yes. And I think 49 carries is what James Peoples had last year. Kind of feel like maybe that's what Bo Jackson would do because of the Samuel Dixon factor as well, where it's not just going to be Bo Jackson getting all of the cleanup carries. But also, I think there's not as much drop-off from the top to Bo Jackson, where last year there was more drop-off from Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins to James Peoples, and that's no slight on James Peoples. You're talking about 2 guys with thousands of yards rushing between them. So I feel like there would be more opportunities for Bo Jackson, and I'll tell you what, whenever Ryan Day starts talking about him, he has to stop himself a little bit and not go too far overboard. And when he does that with players, again, that means something to me, because you can see it just like everybody today, when they were asked, the linebackers today, and James Laurinaitis were asked about Peyton Pierce, you could hear the twinkle, before they started talking about him. And that's the way it is with Bo Jackson as well.
Yeah, I think that Bo is just a little bit different. I think he is, just skills wise. I think he's number one in that room already. He creates when it's not there. I think that there will be no Sam Dixon taking carries away from Bo. That's my prediction on that one. But linebackers today, James said he views Sonny, Arvell, and Peyton, all three, as his starters, which I love to hear. But yeah, the twinkle in the eye about Peyton just continues. With Matt Patricia being a linebacker guy and these guys being a strength of the defense, we talked about early on Ryan Day saying that, it's the Buckeye defense. We're going to bring in the guy who's going to run that defense. And Patricia comes in. Obviously, yes, he can do it. He can do a lot of other things. Part of me feels like the way things seem to have gone with him, so great, the way he's assimilated, the way everybody seems to love him, that maybe with the situation on the defensive line, with the linebackers being a strength, we do see maybe an accelerated version of some different things than we otherwise might not have. Maybe a little more creativity using those linebackers. Or maybe I'm just wishing that because I love to have fun with some linebackers. What do you think?
I think you're saying what we're all saying. Have some 3 linebacker sets and let Sonny and Arvell, alternate. One of those guys goes and rushes the passer at some point, where you can get those 3 guys on the field, and Peyton Pierce can stay back at linebacker, and Sonny or Arvell can stay back, and then one of the other can go and get after the quarterback. Because when Matt Patricia talks about this spring, when he came in, and even before spring, because I think we maybe talked to him in the winter when he was hired, talking about, well, you just look at Sonny and you look at Arvell and the length and then all of the different things that, you start to imagine in terms of what we could do with them defensively and how we would implement them. And, it gets to what Jim Knowles used to talk about, where you're in the lab trying to come up, trying to concoct. And that's what Matt Patricia is doing. And, and James Laurinaitis is going to fight for his guys the entire way. And he talked about fighting to keep Arvell Reese back at linebacker after his freshman year, fighting to get Sonny Styles moved to linebacker from defensive back. And so, yeah, he's going to be all in favor of whatever they want to do, because you can't afford to do some things with Sonny or Arvell that are different because you've got Peyton Pierce there. And I tried to ask James today, is Peyton Pierce ahead of where Arvell was last year and where Cody Simon was the 2 years before that? And that's another time where he said, well, I just view all 3 of them as starters and they're all here. And it's like, I understand that, but is he ahead of where Arvell Reese was? And is he ahead of where Cody Simon was? And that was a year or 2 after Cody Simon was starting at middle linebacker for Ohio State until he got injured. And, Tommy Eichenberg stepped in there, but I just think it's a really good trio. And then there's some guys behind him. And I don't even want to, forget Garrett Stover, who's
right
beat for days, and we'll see what he can do on special teams this year, because James Laurinaitis said it last year. If he's not on kickoff return, kickoff coverage, then something's wrong. So I assume he would have an opportunity to do that this year. But I also think Riley Pettyjohn, TJ Alford, they're going to find some snaps for them somewhere, because guys like that, you got to show them that you'll give them some time, so that they don't ever get impatient with the process.
Can't get impatient. You wrote an article today over at BuckeyeHuddle.com talking about the Buckeyes' position flexibility on the edges. I feel much better than I did, at the end of the season. Obviously, there's been some moves made. You bring in Bo Atkinson. He adds a different dimension. Kenyatta Jackson looks amazing, looks like the leader of the room, looks more explosive. Finished the season really, really well. Caden Curry looks like he's put on some weight. He had a really good day Saturday. I loved watching him. Logan, not so sure about him yet. We'll have to wait and see. But when Matt Patricia was talking about how much he likes creating jobs and he feels it's very important to create jobs for guys, that really stands out to me. And it makes me think, I've been pretty dug in on the CJ Hicks situation, not going to be very impactful on this defense. And my thought behind that was, if you've got the option to use Arvell Reese or CJ Hicks in some kind of package like that, and you got Peyton Pierce who could fill in, I'm going to use Arvell Reese. But maybe he wants to use CJ Hicks. Regardless, looking at him the other day, he looked like he belonged in that room, and he didn't before. Everything was smoother. Just watch him in the spring game. It was not there at all. Yeah, he made a couple plays, but, play in, play out when he was out there, did not look like an edge. He didn't look like the rest of the guys playing. And now he looks different. Obviously, he's got the speed. He's got the twitch. I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm going to be eating my words on that one, Tone.
Well, and keep in mind, Sonny Styles, the first half of last season, with his first year of linebacker, he got better and better and better. And I think you'll see the same thing. CJ Hicks, I don't know how many snaps he's going to play. I think the over under the baseline, just whatever Mitchell Melton did last year. Can you do more than that? I think that's maybe the baseline right now, where are you the fourth guy? Are you the fifth guy? And then you'll have your opportunities. What do you do with them? I thought it was very interesting in the spring where you see him kind of as a weak side defensive end. They're always putting him up against a tight end on the right side or whatever, so that he would have to deal with all that crap. And there'd be a running back over there to chip as well. So he was dealing with it. Was not just an easy go get the quarterback. They put him through the wood chipper and tried to get him as up to speed as possible. But I also don't. This is not a move for this Texas game. This is a move for the next Texas game for CJ Hicks, where now we've got a weapon there. But overall, in Logan, Georgia, he was a little banged up on Saturday, so I don't think we got to see much of him. All of these guys, and I wrote about it. They're all different. You mentioned Kenyatta Jackson. Just looking at him, you're like, if he put on, I don't know, 15, 20 more pounds, he would look like Chase Young in terms of just the frame, because he's listed at 265, but he still looks like he could handle more. And I can't wait to see what he looks like, because again, the way people talk about him, it's as if he's already done everything. And I think he has 3.5 career sacks.
Right.
So he's played, and that's it. And he's been close. And again, I don't like to judge a defensive end only by sacks, because I think that's that's not exactly how it works. But he can, he's a guy that we always just see as like this just outside pass rusher, but he's big enough now to slide inside and rush man. Caden Curry grew up being a defensive tackle. He's smaller, but he's comfortable inside. Bo Atkinson played inside a ton last year at North Carolina, and they're defensive alignment. Logan George played in a 3-3-5, so he went against all the guards and centers all the time, so he's comfortable with that. The only guy who's never done it is CJ Hicks, and you're not necessarily going to put him on the inside of the rushman package. And I'm also interested to see how often in that rushman is Edric Houston staying in the game, because he's a guy that could be an advantage there. But also you're probably going to want to get him some rest, because how deep do they go at defensive tackle? I don't know. But I do think the defensive ends can steal some snaps for the defensive tackles, can get some rest for Cade McDonald, for Edric Houston, and we'll see what happens behind those two guys. I think that was the biggest question coming in. It'll be the biggest question going out, and that probably includes the quarterbacks.
It was, for sure. And I had been saying for a while, if your biggest question is depth at one particular, position group, you're doing pretty doggone good, and your team is probably pretty stout. And you kind of made it, you said it in a better way.
Thank you.
It was something to the effect of, I think I wrote it down. Do you remember what you said?
No, I say a lot of things that I don't remember much.
Yeah, you wrote it down. Gosh, was something to the effect of, we may not be talking enough about the depth is not important as the starters. And in the fact it was that K-Mac and Edric look like a really stout duo in there. And that's kind of the point. Those two starters, really, really good. Obviously, K-Mac has proven it to us. Edric, not so much yet, but man, everything you've seen so far out of him looks like he is ready to take on that load. He's a big, just moose of a man, and got a great motor, really strong for his size. I see those two being really stout inside together.
And I agree, but there's still a question because they haven't been asked to do it for 50 snaps a game like they're going to be now. I will say on Thursday, the first day of camp, just watching Edric before he went down, he moves like he can cover a ton of ground in just a step, and you're like, that shouldn't happen because he's, that day he was listed at 270. The next day I think he was listed at 292, and it wasn't because he challenged Joey Chestnut to a hot dog eating contest. He's a big, fast dude, and we're all interested to see what he can do. There's a ton of promise there. It's going to be a tough first one, but again, Texas is rebuilding their offensive line a little bit, so this is an opportunity for them to really make a name for themselves immediately.
Yeah. Behind K-Mac at 1 sec, a lot of talk about Will Smith. I didn't see anything out of him that made me feel super confident. Have you seen it? Have you seen something that make you feel better about that?
No. And again, it's so early, and the 2 days before that, there are no pads, nothing much going on. But the thing that I always go back to is when the name is brought up with nobody asking about that name. Mm-hmm. When Ryan Day brings up Will Smith's name without being asked about Will Smith. When Sonny Styles, I believe, brings up Will Smith's name without being asked about Will Smith. Like, those are the things that catch my attention because, again, we're reading tea leaves through all of this and can only see so much. And even when you're at 3 straight practices, you saw it. How much could you pay attention to when you can only pay attention to one thing at a time? And I think that's something people maybe miss or don't necessarily understand is you can have 5 people go to a practice and all see different things and come away with different thoughts because you're watching separate things, or I didn't see the 3 Julian Sands incompletions, but you did, and that's what we're basing our judgment on. So to hear people talk about guys does as much for me as seeing a few plays or not seeing a few plays.
Mm-hmm. Do you like the idea of downs at nickel? Does this maybe help you get your best possible, most skilled lineup on the field?
Well, and it's he did it at times last year as well. I think I know right away when he was lined up there on that first day, it was eye-opening, but you go back and you look, the way that defense was, everybody had to play nickel, everybody had to play free safety. In terms of Jordan Hancock, Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, they would all have to shift depending on motion or whatever. So everybody had to be able to play all 3 spots. And I think putting him there at nickel, again, I don't think that's his spot. We saw Jermaine Matthews there on Saturday. We saw Bryce West out wide at corner when he had been at nickel behind Lorenzo Styles. I think, again, this is information gathering, and as much I'd say it's not for Caleb Downs, it's for the other 2 guys that are getting time at safety, whether it's Jalen McClain and Malik Hartford playing together, because they haven't gotten to do that a lot because one of them's always with Caleb Downs, basically.
Yeah.
And so if you can get those 2 guys together so that they can get accustomed to doing that, and then Fahim Delane as the number 2 strong safety, we're seeing a little bit of Leroy Roker as the number 3 free safety. I think I'm interested to see how the safety situation plays out, because I was talking to Matt Patricia about it, and you don't want to be like, we're going to put Caleb Downs at strong safety, Malik Hartford at free safety for certain plays, and then certain other plays we're going to put Caleb Downs at free safety and Jalen McClain at strong safety, because then you get predictable. So you have to make sure that doesn't happen. So I'm fascinated to see how much Hartford and McClain play in terms of, is it a 50-50 situation? Is it 40-60? Whatever it is, both of those guys are going to play, but so is Lorenzo Styles. And so, what does this all look like? Again, just goes back to the linebacker talk we've had, the defensive end talk we had. Find stuff that those guys can do well, get them to do it, but be careful that you're not predictable when you're doing it, because eventually you're going to get caught.
For sure. I'll tell you what, I'm feeling pretty good about IGB. That one of my bold predictions was IGB wins over the Ohio State fan base again after everybody turning on him last year and wishing that he would go off to the NFL. I was really happy to get him back. And boy, he looks like a leader out there. He's obviously always very vocal, but if it weren't for those penalties, everybody loved this guy. If he could just clean those up, I think he's going to continue to get better. Who do you think is the third corner, Tone?
No. The third corner is either Devin Sanchez or Aaron Scott. But again, I was really, really impressed with Bryce West. The first time he got to play corner this fall on Saturday, he was everywhere. He was making plays. He was punching the ball out. But I think, it'll be Aaron Scott or Devin Sanchez. And the thing is, if it goes back to one of those things where with the elite prospects, if they're even, they're leaving type of thing. Like if you're in a race with Ted Ginn, if he's even, he's leaving. How even is it right now with Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott? And if it is even after, Devin Sanchez being 15 practices and now, 5 or whatever it is, if they're even now, where are they in another 15 practices? And has Devin Sanchez taken lead at that point? But I also think, I think both of those guys can play some snaps this year. And I've said this before, Kerry Combs brought in the 3-man rotation. That was his thing. And he always wanted a 4-man rotation. He wanted Damon Arnett so badly, I think, to do it in 2016, and he just wasn't ready. He just couldn't do it. So they were stuck with the 3 first-rounders that they had in 2016. But I wonder how close they could get to that if they wanted to do it. But we know these people last year rotated on the offensive line. Okay. So if you're going to be able to rotate on the offensive line, that's already the crazy thing,
Right.
So will they do some of that? But that depends on how close Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez are. We think they're really good, but are they, like, in terms of, like, Kerry Combs used to say, and I know he no longer coaches at Ohio State, but why would I bring in somebody that's worse to rotate? So it's like, you've got Devin Sanchez and Aaron Scott have to get up here because you don't want to take the rotation down here. They've got to get up there if they want to be in the rotation. But I think both of those guys are going to be really good. I know they get frustrated at times having to deal with the receivers that they're dealing with and not being able to touch them and hit them and grab them and things like that. But as you said, IGB with the leadership, watching him on I think Thursday when practice got moved inside, standing behind him, coaching up Jordan Woods, coaching up Fahim Delane, like he's locked in. He's a leader, and again, that's a 3-year starter at Ohio State at cornerback. There's not a lot of those guys.
It's important, man. It's really, really important. And as a whole, I think this team looks ready to go, buddy. But let's move on, Tone, quickly before I let you roll to yesterday's press conference with Ross Bjork. It was a very important one. Tradition evolved. We are evolving traditions at Ohio Stadium. And you were the hero of the press conference, which we'll get to. But you did write an article about one of the things that's going to happen here. And this is Brutus. Brutus is having a different entrance for every game. My favorite was game number 1, your prediction. He comes in riding Bevo, which I love. Are we certain? Is Bevo coming? I know he's not been invited to a lot of different places. Is he allowed to come? Does he travel?
No, I don't believe he is. But with Ohio State can fly. It doesn't have to be Bevo. It can just be any old Longhorn. I believe the point would be the same, basically. Yeah. But yeah, that was one of those things. Every once in a while, I have to write something for myself, and then the people can have all the other stuff. Sometimes I need to do stuff for me, and that was one of them today.
It worked. It hit with me too, buddy. It hit with me too. Ross Bjork catching a ton of flack over other stuff. When it comes to this, I love the initiative. Okay. I don't love every single thing, but I love the initiative to make make a better game day atmosphere. We've been sitting here whining about this for 20 years. What can we do to make it better? And here comes a guy. He goes around. Sure, he stole an idea from here and an idea from here, and he put a little Ohio State twist on it. But it's initiative to make something better. And I'm not ever going to knock somebody for doing that. A couple of things I love. I love incorporating the victory bell. It's underutilized. I love the stadium architecture. I love that bell. I think there's probably a lot of people who don't even know about that bell. And bringing that into, like I think the Minnesota Vikings games, when they start off with somebody important blows the horn. Like I think of it like that. It's the It's the start of the damn game. Here we go. Third down, instead of hell's bells, we can hear the real bell. It's cool. I like it. I dig that. Moving the band, the way they repackage that messaging, and to know we're doing this to make this louder, not because we're building these stands down here. That was brilliant. I loved that too. Also like that they're putting speakers on a field. That's really smart. I've heard that opposing players really have a hard time with that at Texas, where they've got temporary speakers on the field, blasting in the band. The song tone, the song Ohio. I think we could have sought a little more feedback on the particular song, but I do like having a new anthem that has more energy to it outside of the band. I think the idea behind it's good. I don't know what else. The towels, obviously, towels really get places hyped that embrace the towels. I'm a Browns fan. Don't love the idea there with it. It's got to be a towel, but a pom-pom's no better. So what are you going to do? I know I was talking to my buddy who was a security guy on the field at Heinz Field, and he said that when they really get it going, you can feel the field shaking under your feet. If it can be anything like that, that's cool. I did get some feedback from that particular song. This isn't a campfire state. The gentleman said it's like a meme of Ohioans. Let's enjoy some music together and share a Pabst like we're a sticky mullet wearing smokers with cut off flannels and jorts. So not everybody happy with the song. How do you feel about all this, Tone? What do you think?
I'm with you. Like, everybody complains about the lack of environment. So, okay, well, what are all of the places that have great environments? What do they do? And I'll tell you, the AMP song is a great example of this, because you go to Oregon and they have something similar. That's where Ohio State got it. And it's awesome. And they sing this song, Coming Home parentheses Oregon by Matt Kearney. And it's great. And it's a very similar song. It's a little bit longer and there's more sing-along parts. And I think in terms of finding a song, they could have found one that had more sing-along parts. And then this song starts pretty quickly and it's got a lot of fast words, and that doesn't make for a great stadium sing-along.
Right.
But it's the idea. And again, these are all ideas. And I like the Buckeye leaves again in for the fans and for the stadium. I like basically all of South Stands is going to be students, and I love that. I don't know why Block O was ever split up. When I was a student there 30 years ago, it was all North End, and so now it'll all be South End, and you'll have all of the students there, and they can be as loud as they want. They'll show up late, I'm sure, and it'll take a while for South Stands to fill in. But having the band on the north side with the amplification, I think, is going to be great. I know there are some people upset about Hang On Sloopy moving from the end of the third quarter. Yeah, I mean, they can still play it at the end of the third quarter if they want. You know, they can play it whenever they want. The Victory Bell thing is, I was going to the post game. It was I think it was last season. And whoever, like, there was nobody showed up to ring the victory bell. So like the person that ran the thing had to go and do it. So when people talk about, well, the victory bell, it's important. The bell ringers, weren't even showing up. So like, this is a situation where we're making it, Ross's Bjork is like, we're making it more important. And so is that a problem? Why is that a problem? And I know there's the whole thing of, if you ring the victory bell before a win, you're going to jinx Ohio State. And it's like, of all the football gods out there, I don't know that they're worried about that one, but I get it, because if they do it and they lose and Texas beats them, I don't know that we're going to see it in week 2. And if we do see it in week 2 and they lose to Grambling, we're not going to see it in week 3. So I'll just guarantee that right now. But and the towels, I guarantee everybody's going to want a towel that first game, because it's going to be 96 degrees out. So it's like, I love this towel. And that will change with the themes. Like I was talking with the director of marketing about all of this, and I was asking, what's the price point? It's like, well, we don't know yet in terms of how much it's going to cost, but they obviously want to make it accessible. I think the terrible towel is like $15. I would assume it would be lower than that, but assuming something would be lower than that in terms of Ohio State pricing, I don't want to throw that out there. But like with the blackout for Penn State, kind of assume there's going to be a black towel for military appreciation. Assume there would be a camouflage towel for a Michigan game type of thing. That there's going to be something special with that as well. So there'll be different towels to purchase, of course. I think Texas does towels and they give them out to everybody basically. Like, there's other schools that will not necessarily charge you for things like that. But I remember when I was a student, we had the pom-poms, and those would end up everywhere, and you wouldn't take them home necessarily because there'd be more next week. And so I don't have a problem with trying to do some things, different things, incorporate things that have worked elsewhere and saying, hey, let's see if they can work here. And if only 6 of the 8 things work, now you got 6 things that work and keep people engaged.
6. Yeah. You're +6. That's a good thing. What drives me nuts about these guys, man, I got to tell you, we're doing a scarlet out. We're doing the stripe out. We're doing a blackout. We've got no confirmation if we're doing the matching uniforms, which everybody loves when you do this. I'm a traditionalist, a uniform traditionalist, but these new ones, they're the same template. It's just changing the color. It's not a alt uniform. It is the uniform. So even a guy like me digs that, and everybody loves it. Everybody wants it. And it's always this huge struggle about it. I don't understand it. Don't get me started on the gray sleeves. I mean, I just don't understand why it's got to be so difficult with something that is so simple. Your thoughts, Tony?
I have sleeve blindness. Like, I'm not able to point stuff like that out, but I have always liked the alternate uniforms that were going, just, we've never seen them before. They were an homage to the 1942 team. I liked all of those different helmets. They all grew on me. They all did well with age. So I like some of the changes, but yeah, like I hate the gray jerseys. I don't like the black jerseys, and I'll tell you why. You can't read the numbers from the press box, and so it's like you're watching players. I don't know who that is. I'm sure it's either a 4 or it's a 2 or it's an 8 or it's a 9, and so that's one where I start yelling at the clouds with these darn alternate jerseys. Like make them easier for me to read. But I like all the stuff that all the Terrell Pryor, those were just really different stuff, as opposed to now everything we've seen it before, and it's not as special. The players still love it, so I guess that's all that matters. But when there's no one-off thing, I think it loses some luster.
I saw you mention in an article the other day, and I am missing one here. I need you to complete this for me. There are 7 sons of Buckeyes on the team. I got Rudzinski, 2 Styles, Stanley Jackson, Will Smith Jr., Deontay Griffin. Who am I missing?
Well, let's see. Did you say Will Smith?
I did.
All right. Now let me just read through this. Go ahead and vamp while I do this.
So Ryan Rudzinski, that one had me stumped for a minute, and I was forgetting to add 2 Styles. Obviously, that one stumped me for a minute. I knew Deontay Griffin quickly. Will Smith, go ahead.
Jason Gwynn.
Gwynn.
I believe he's the son of Anthony.
There we go. Okay, forgot that. There we go. So let's get to the finality of. Go ahead.
And Mason Maggs. So we didn't even go with the Griffin because I wasn't sure if is that,
his dad played.
Kevin Griffin, is that his dad? Maybe
I forget, but I double checked it. His dad did play.
So there you go, 8, I guess, right?
Andre Griffin.
Okay, yeah. So that's Archie's kid, right?
Yeah, and he's Deontay's his grandson.
Okay, so there you go. Yeah, I think Andre was Jim Tressel offered him a scholarship way back in the day. But yeah, so that's 8 kids then.
8 kids. That's something special. I think that's really unique and really cool, to be honest. And the fact that you got a couple of big time contributors in there is also really cool. But the end of the tradition evolved press conference. There was, one brave soldier who said, "Can I ask a question about NIL?" And, I don't know what you're supposed to do if you're the gentleman in the chair there, other than say, of course you can. I'm sitting here at a press conference, and that fellow was you. And you basically asked, and this was, a kind of a part 2, because you and Tom had a conversation with Ross Bjork at Big Ten Media Days. And immediately after the thing ended, some big news came out. And that news was that the CSC had folded and folded their argument about collectives being categorized as a business like any other business. That is obviously a really big piece of news, because now what a collective can do, and essentially what this means a school can do, is something that a school playing by the rules could not do before, which is guarantee an NIL deal. You couldn't guarantee an NIL deal because if you're doing this true NIL deal the way it was intended, you can't guarantee this recruit that there are going to be enough businesses to fulfill this deal that want to work with him. However, now you kind of can, within reason, because you can operate those collectives and essentially manufacture jobs is basically what you're doing. You're coming up with coaching clinics, you're coming up with cheese tastings and autograph sessions and whatever the heck you want. If you get one player approved, all of a sudden they cannot deny you for the other 90 players. They're all going through. And basically your question was to Ross, now that you have seen this new news, and since this has come out, we've not spoken to you since, is there going to be a pivot in philosophy here as to how you're running things, or are things staying the same? And his answer was, well, we were in the place to pivot, and basically because we've got everything, ready, we didn't really need to, which means he's saying absolutely not. We're not changing anything. And I'm not sure if he doesn't understand what other schools are doing or if he thinks we don't, but at some point, this has got to change.
Is that a question or a statement?
A statement.
Well, here's the thing. Like, all the CSC said was that, like, all of this stuff still has to pass muster through NIL Go. Now, it's maybe a little bit of more lenient on what they consider a business purpose. But I think one of the things is there still has to be profit made from any of these ventures.
No.
It has to be it still has to be approved. And the thing
Tony,
is,
that's wrong.
All right.
There's no profit. Yeah, it has to go through the clearinghouse.
Mm-hmm.
This is the whole point. And this is the entire thing about this. So for instance, if I get one guy on the team approved this deal, if you're looking at it as the clearinghouse, yeah, it's a legit deal. They're paying this kid $4,000 and he's coaching. They're putting on a clinic. They cannot deny the rest of the 90 players. They're all getting approved for that same deal, which means it's absolutely not profitable. It's just the opposite. I'm a collective and I've now funneled this money successfully to all of these players. And that's the whole crux of the argument. And that's why this was so consequential.
The way, yeah, and again, I've got questions still about this, and the collectives will be operating, and the Buckeye Sports Group will be operating. You still can't pay high school kids, and that's one thing. And like you're saying, you can guarantee what they can get, but I think the good thing is you haven't. I would assume by this point some things would have been denied, right? If they were going to be denied. And then you'd have more pushback from the House attorneys. And since we haven't seen that yet, I think that's good news that, like they said, they are more lenient. But I don't know how aggressive Ohio State is with really who. There's still guys that you're going to have to try to get guys back, and that's going to be a tough ask. Now you're like, can you keep Braylon? Can you get Braylon Womack? Those sorts of things. Can you get the guys that you still have? And then I don't know that they're going to be able to go and get the guys that they lost. And so really, like, if that's not on the table necessarily, then what major change would you expect from Ohio State right now in recruiting? Like, if those guys are gone, what should Ohio State be doing? And maybe I'm assuming they're gone, and I shouldn't assume that. So, like, what if they're able to do whatever? What should they do if those guys are already gone?
I think the first thing is people, now that obviously you've lost a lot of guys on the trail, when you were anywhere near the ballpark, because what you were doing as Ohio State was offering a portion of revenue share and in a sales pitch that when you come to Ohio State, we got a whole lot for you to be able to go earn, because here's what we got laid out for you. And that sounds great. And I actually think in the system, Ohio State has almost the best situation than anybody else if this is actually operating as it should. I mean, you got the whole state of Ohio. It's just it's money ready to be printed. But if these other schools are offering you revenue share and in addition to that guaranteed NIL deals, it's curtains for you. But I highly doubt it from the beginning that they were going to double back on some of these guys they lost, because what we saw was these deals just get they even went way up from last year. The money that these guys were getting, a couple of these dudes and guys that don't even deserve anywhere near that kind of money. And I hate to even use the word deserve, but it's just true. It just got ridiculous for some guys that really didn't even have a super high floor. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I can't justify that, whether it's coming off my salary cap or not. But when you look at Braylon Womack, I think this one's going to tell the tale. Guys made it clear, man, through his parents multiple times. Ohio State's the pick. The money's just got to be close. And if they don't make that happen, this class finishes outside the top 10. People are going to be panicking. It's going to be bad, man. I just wanted to hear something that was a little more comforting from Ross Bjork that day. And it wasn't very comforting to hear him say, well, if we had to pivot, we would have, but we didn't have to.
It was very much, we knew this was happening. It's business as usual. It's like, well, have you seen how business is going?
That's what I'm saying.
But what they did is they were following the rules of the CSC. Then the CSC changed their rules. And so now Ohio State, he doesn't want to say pivot. Now Ohio State can pivot, because again, you were doing one thing, and now that the rules are this, a little more, a lot more lenient or whatever, now you can start to, you've got all these businesses that you're talking about where you can start to, stroke some future memorandums of understanding type of things and get players ready, have them understand what kind of deals they've got coming for them. So I don't think any leader like Ross Bjork doesn't ever want to say, yeah, we had to pivot, because then that kind of admits fault. It's like, no, we knew the river was going to go this way, and now we're ready to, take the turn with it. That's on the lazy river. And, but I agree. The Braylon Womack thing is going to be the litmus test in this. And and then it becomes, if the money keeps getting higher and higher, it still goes back to the question. And it's one of the statements that Ryan Day said, if you bring somebody in and they're making more money than your starters, and that guy is not playing, it's not good for the locker room. And
it's true.
Until Miami wins a national championship, until USC buys a national championship, until Texas Tech does it, Texas A&M, it doesn't work. Now, being competitive in NIL does, and that's where Ohio State needs to be. But trying to just buy it, it has not worked. It's terrible for the locker room. It's not buying, it's renting, as Texas A&M showed, as Tennessee showed with Nico Iamaleava, as the quarterback that went to Florida and Arizona State. Now he's out of football basically entirely. So,
I know.
You got to be careful.
He's starting his career at UTEP or something.
Yeah. So you got to be careful. It's
absolutely
for us.
I think they've done a great job balancing the line there.
Now,
so far,
right? And I understand people want them to be more aggressive. They're the most consistent football program for the last 100 years that there is. And they got there doing it the way they do it. And so to convince them that they need to do it some other way when they're just coming off of a national championship, like, that's going to be a hard sell, especially when you've got attorneys saying, we're not doing that. And you've got an AD saying, I'm going to listen to the attorneys. And right now, these are the rules. And talking to Ross, he's like, the problem is we all agree to the rules. So why aren't we following them?
But Tony's also saying we're waiting on the rules. He just said that yesterday too. So which is it? Do we all know the rules and nobody's following them, or we're waiting on the rules?
That's a problem, because even you and I aren't agreeing on the rules, and we're not seeing the rules because he's like, they've not been published. So like, I can't talk about this in 100% certainty, because every time I talk to Ross Bjork and have questions, I come out of them, I've got more questions. And when I try to talk to other compliance people, it's like I leave with questions. So when you get answers from people that end in a question mark, it's like, that's everybody's concerned. Ryan Day's like, I hate operating in the gray. Everybody hates the gray. The gray is starting to lift, but it's still out there.
If my heart wasn't so involved with one particular team in college football and I was just covering this sport, like, this would be the most hilarious thing I've ever seen, watching this unfold. I mean, it is hilarious. Unfortunately, I've got heart invested in this. And I appreciate you so much, dude. This was awesome. It's everything I always wanted, Tony. One of the things I always wanted to do was a show with you. I really did. No, not that. No, I learned my lesson before I even tried. I'm not going to do that. I just always wanted to do a show with you. I thought it would be great. It was even better than I expected.
All you got to do is ask.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon.
Yep. See ya.
Have a good one. And that was our man, Tony Gerdeman. You heard him there. He said, all I got to do is ask. I'll let you know if he backs out on that. That was such a great conversation. And we see a lot of things the same way, which started off, obviously, with our Heisman picks, our Mount Rushmore picks. I was very happy to hear that he was in agreement on 1, 2, and 3, did chicken out a little bit on 4, but went ahead and agreed with me on 4. We get to a couple super chats here. Jordan Kapler, listen, I read this, Jordan. Jordan, thank you for the 5. Jordan said, I'll do another $5 super chat if you power pause Tony. And I thought about it, but that was what he was just saying to me at the end when he said, don't do it. So I didn't do it. Him and Tom had an intro, and in their intro, they said that Tom said, Juck said on the board that he was going to, couldn't wait to power pause Tom. And they got really angry about me trying to invade on their power pause thing. It's just the two of them deal. So I'm not going to do it. New guy, know your place kind of thing. You know what I mean? Jordan also says, need to start a petition to have Jermaine Matthews on every video. The dude is hilarious. He's the best, man. The guy is electric. I love it. Josh R. Ross Bjork turning us into a laughing stock. First recruiting now this song. So Josh's point, and why I brought that up at the end to talk to Tony about, is Josh R's sentiment here is what a lot of the stuff I see. And, I spend my day on Twitter in Ohio State boards and stuff. And it's just like, there is a huge amount of people that are just furious about the NIL situation, the recruiting situation, and then the answer that Ross Bjork gave yesterday. Now, there's also a lot of stuff that people don't understand. And I understand that, I follow this stuff way closer than a lot of people. So I try to explain it as best as I can. The truth is, we do know the rules. I don't know why he's saying we don't know the rules. He said it yesterday, and it's true that they haven't been published. He absolutely knows the rules. He was involved in the writing of the rules and in selecting the CDC. He knows the rules. I know the rules. The way some teams are pretending they don't know the rules is great. They're getting a big leg up here. And he absolutely knows now that you can legally fabricate a lot of these deals. You can fabricate deals. If I want to pay this defensive back $50,000 his freshman year out of NIL, I can now make that happen, because I can just say to my collective, we owe him $50,000, and the collective is going to fabricate $50,000 worth of things. Now, the thing is, like I was saying to Tony, if I give that guy a $7,000 deal to come and do a meet and greet with fans, and he's got to do 5 social media posts to advertise for this meet and greet and autograph signing, and his deal goes through the clearinghouse, right? Well, now what I can do is I can give that deal to every single one of my players. And that is a huge losing venture, something a business could not do because there's absolutely no profit. No, you're losing money. And that's the goal when you're a collective. Your goal is to lose money to the players. And that's why it never should have been granted as a business classification. But the CDC couldn't fight it because they knew they'd lose in court. So they gave up on it and they caved on it. And right there, that's when this thing became a farce. That's when it became a farce. Now, Ohio State not going to operate like that. Ross made that clear. Not going to operate like that. But the worst thing about it is this is how other schools were already operating. And now that you can do it, other schools that weren't even operating like that were operating like Ohio State, are now starting to do it. And Ohio State's not. So not only were they behind the schools that were already cheating beforehand, now they're going to be behind the schools that are pivoting to that. And that, I think, is a growing frustration for a lot of folks. But the remainder of the class is a hold on to your seat class, land Braylon Womack, or you finish outside the top 10. And I like the class. I really do. I like a lot of the guys in the class. But coming off a national championship, falling outside the top 10, ridiculous. Should never happen. Ethan says 3 Techs and LJ's defense usually have good production. Who's in that role? That's our boy Edric Houston, brother. And he is going to have really good production. Jam OSU, are they doing the brick thing at practice? Yes, they are. They are doing scarlet bricks, stacking the bricks one day or one per practice. Richie Dubs, my guy. Why was Ryan Day the only coach in the history of the sport to have natty or bust expectations? Where's the natty or bust for Sark? It's an interesting point. Obviously, the Buckeyes put a lot of those on themselves, but we know damn well that even before they were saying that themselves, most of the national media who cover the sport was saying if he doesn't get it done this year with this roster, discard him. I think the losses in the game attributed to a lot of that, to be honest. But yeah, you're right. Sharice says, how about hang on Sloopy? So how many of you guys are irritated about this potentially moving from the after the third quarter? I'm a traditionalist. I love tradition. I hate tradition changing, but I'm okay with this moving. I love hang on Sloopy and I love it in the stadium. It's maybe as a kid, like one of the standout memories is doing that, at the stadium with everybody. But the fact that it might be at a different time, to me, that doesn't really bother me. It doesn't. But I understand if it bothers somebody. I get it. Ultimately, I just think what you're doing is you're trying to get this Ohio song to be that sing-along song like Tone was talking about. And I think he's right. However, the song, it doesn't seem like a very sing-along friendly song. And I'll also say that when the guy says Ohio in the refrain of the song, I can barely even understand the guy saying Ohio because it's Ohio. And what are you saying, man? Enunciate your words. He could never do what I do. Oh, man. This is the best, guys. I really have a whole lot of fun doing the show here at Buckeye Huddle Primetime every Monday and Wednesday. We're at an hour and a half show tonight, which is just ridiculous. I usually lose my voice if I'm doing this for an hour and a half by myself. Thankfully, Tony, he's a pro, man. A lot of people, when you have him on your show, you might ask him a question, they answer you in one sentence. Tony knows, okay, we're doing a show, man. I got to give some back and forth, and he'll just roll. So that was great. A whole lot of fun. Richie Dubs seems to like it. Juck and Tony G might be the new Jordan and Pippen. We'll see what myself and Mark Givler are like, because we're going to record tomorrow a new edition of Skull Session, the recruiting podcast, and I promise I'll try not to get all worked up again. But we're talking philosophy tomorrow, and we're going to get a little further into that discussion for those of you who don't just like to hear the baseline, but you like to hear a little more of the nuts and bolts of the situation. Little Boy Gaming, what's up? How you doing? Richie Dubs wants a call-in show. Richie, think about this. Do you really want a call-in show? I've had a couple of people say this, but there's a couple of shows I listen to that do a call-in show, and it ends up being like, I recognize that, oh, I remember why I watch this show. It's because I like to hear the host. I don't want to hear this other guy talk. And the other guy is usually a caller who it might be making a salient point, but I don't know, he's boring or he drones on about something. Is it something you really want? I mean, we can do it. We can do it. I just don't know. I tend to not click on it, even when it's a show I like. If it's a call-in edition, I tend to not click on it. Woody's, when do we start seeing donor fatigue? Look at the past misses for OSU. Ewers, Hicks, Fleming. How much money would have been wasted so far? Fair point. I think that this past cycle, for instance, I know, and as a matter of fact, I just got an email yesterday. A Buckeye fan that watches the show saying, hey, should I still be donating to the collective? Should I still be donating to the foundation? Or is this just wasted money? And my response to him was, I cut off my donations as soon as these rules came out with the House settlement. However, now that the CSC made that ruling, things are different. Now they're going to need our money again. So my advice to him was, if you want to continue to help, it'll be to a good cause if you continue to donate to the foundation. But donor fatigue, Richie, as we currently sit, there are no rules. Let's operate like it. Yeah, I mean, the Braylon Womack recruitment is everything. Womack, did somebody say that, Richie, that he's not a good culture fit? He's absolutely a great culture fit. Not only a great culture fit, but a kid who is legitimately a Buckeye fan since he was in junior high. And I quizzed him myself in a way. I didn't straight up say, okay, you're going to answer some questions. I dug a little deeper because a lot of guys say that and they're just saying it because they may have watched an Ohio State game and thought, yeah, that's really cool. This kid legitimately was a Buckeye fan in Mississippi and has made it clear through his family that the Buckeyes have been number one all along his entire recruitment. And yeah, that's going to require a financial investment because he's getting massive offers elsewhere. And it would be irresponsible, and nobody would ever tell your own kid, you wouldn't tell your kid, okay, you're going to go there instead of go here when they're offering you a third of the money. You wouldn't. You just wouldn't. So when people try to make that sound like that's not a good culture fit because they're being advised by their parent on how to make sound financial decisions in their life, it's just disingenuous as hell. It really is. I'm getting kind of sick of it, to be honest. You would not tell your own kid, oh, go take that $200,000 and not this $1.5 million to go to this school, who also has a list this long of NFL players they've put in the NFL, and you clearly like very much because they made your Final Four. It's just disingenuous, man. It really is. It drives me nuts. Thanks, Don B. Appreciate you always for being here, buddy. Womack is definitely the dude, Emily. Rod says, you're right, but I think we're in the 1% of programs that can also get away with not getting into bidding wars for unproven recruits. Is 100% correct. Let me be clear. We're not in a bidding war for Braylon Womack. We're not coming close to the top bid. All we need to do is make this respectable, and he's the Buckeyes. However, respectable compared to what he's getting is going to be a healthy investment. And normally the kind of the barometer is it going to be a guy who's going to be able to contribute year one? And it is, when we look at the room, I don't know. I don't know if he is going to be able to contribute year one. It's a very talented room. When we look at next year, you got Malik Hartford and Jalen McClain off a full another year of experience. You got Fahim Delane and another freshman in Blaine Bradford, who's really, really good too. But Womack's versatility, I would think they're banking on, he's playing next year. I mean, the dude's a unique talent. He really is. And yes, we are when we look at the guys, there are some guys that we get, and I brought up Quincy Porter earlier. Quincy Porter could have gotten massive deals, but it's a little different when we talk about Ohio State wide receivers. You're joining a fraternity, you're joining something special. We see guys take less money in that role all the time. Ohio State safety, not a recent big track record of pumping guys into the NFL. Yeah, this also counts for position too. Again, the proven development of players in the NFL and huge contracts being signed still helps OSU a ton. Exactly, it does. But there are some positions where it's not, and this is true too. We didn't drop the bag for Damon Wilson out of the portal. So, all right, my friends. Dreamer, thank you so much. This one is a GV Art and Design shirt. They make fantastic shirts. I just love them. But yeah, this print on this thing, it's really cool. It's really pretty. You go all the way down, you get the Buckeye leaf at the bottom. Love it. Great shirt. I wanted in a hoodie. They've been sold out of the hoodie for like 6 months. You can't get it. So anyway, appreciate you guys so much. I will be back Buckeye Huddle Primetime next Monday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. all season long. We'll be here, you and I, and Mark Givler and myself will be pumping out an episode of Skull Session here in the next few days. Expect that at minimum by Friday morning, I would say. We're going to shoot, I believe, tomorrow night at 9. So look out for that Friday morning. And I'll definitely have another episode of Juck on Bucks before the week's over, for sure, over at the Juck on Bucks channel. If you are watching this on Buckeye Huddle and you're not familiar, I do a lot of videos over at Juck on Bucks as well. Head over there and subscribe for more good Buckeye content. And if you are a Juck on Bucker who for some reason is not subscribed to Buckeye Huddle, that would be strange. I doubt there's many of you, but there might be one. Let's go ahead and subscribe to Buckeye Huddle. That is the currency with which we deal in. Those of us behind this microphone, we need those subscriptions. We need those likes. And that's all we ask from you guys. But sometimes you're generous enough to give us super chats. And thank you so much to those of you who have contributed in that way this evening. Jordan Kapler, Chris Lane is a new member. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining Buckeye Huddle. Gosh, it's hard keeping track of what platform I'm on. Anyway, you guys are the best. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll talk to you soon. Juck on